Let's get Niclas to join us here. If we could add Niclas's video to the window as well.
Hi, John.
Hi, Niclas. How are you?
I
If you
am
could
good.
give us
How are you?
Good. If you could give us a quick introduction and your background, and then we'll jump right into some questions here with Will.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Niclas Gyllenram. I've been working for Volvo Cars the last 6 years. I led and actually started our development on Android Automotive. And most recently, I've been leading the R&D team in Sunnyvale, California for Volvo Cars, focusing on working with partners here in Silicon Valley and infotainment and AD mainly as an office. And earlier this year, I'm not sure if anyone noticed, actually, we announced with the Volvo XC40 battery electric vehicle a collaboration we've done with ChargePoint, actually bringing a ChargePoint experience, handling payment for charging with ChargePoint stations seamlessly in the vehicle, which I think was a great collaboration, really, and it helps solve some small piece of this puzzle, but there's a lot of problems remaining still, of course.
Yes. Well, and Volvo's made a commitment now to go all electric. Is that correct? And by 2025, is that right?
No, I think it's by 2030.
Okay.
That's my understanding of the commitment we made. We're definitely focusing on electric vehicles for sure, and I think it's clear it's the future. It's only a question about when. From Volvo's point of view, we're all in.
Yeah. So a question for both of you. I guess if you could give a grade, and you know, I think Niclas, you see it from the automaker's perspective, and Will, you may have seen it from the payments side of thing. If you give a grade to the state of EV charging right now, in the US and globally, what grade would you give it?
I would probably be quite harsh. I would give it, I guess, a D or something. It's very fragmented. Over the last couple of weeks, I've had the opportunity to actually test drive one of our Volvo XC40s. It's a great car. It's great with charging, but I'm actually, frankly, a bit scared if I ever need to charge in a public charging station. I'm scared to know even if the physical charger will fit. I'm very scared about the payment piece, because I've been spending a lot of time trying to get just charging to work in public charging stations, and you know, it's fragmented between different car companies and different charging station providers. And I know that globally, I've only been driving around here in California with my electric car now, but I know globally it's even more fragmented with different electricity providers. So it's very clear it's a very early stages for the whole charging industry and the EV industry.
I would agree. I think it's a C in the markets where EV charging is developing, and you know, outside those it's worse. And the whole question of what we call spotlight anxiety in the payments industry, which is the phenomenon that Niclas has just eloquently described. You know, that moment where you're standing in front of something, and even worse, potentially there's a queue of people standing behind you, and you can't figure out how to make the payment, how to pay the money that you owe. That is a very significant and palpable source of anxiety that we see in every part of the retail economy. And EV charging is suffering its fair share. You know, it's a bit of a mystery when you walk up to the charge point at the moment. Nobody knows what to expect. And I think you can contrast that with the fuel industry, where everybody knows what to expect.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's even to the point where if I've managed to find one charging station that I know how it works, that I know that I actually can use, I will I will easily take a detour to make sure I can use that same station the next time, because just to kind of relieve some of that.
We're starting
anxiety.
to ascribe some value to the, how important it is for consumers to avoid spotlight anxiety.
Yeah, but then at the same time, I think a lot of the time we tend to think about charging based on our long experience with gas, and it's a very, very different experience, because first of all, I don't go to public charging stations that often. With gas, it's always public gas stations, because I don't have my own at home, or I don't have a gas station at work. But with charging, you tend to actually do, and you might find them in parking garages and so on. So it's a very different problem, and compared to how you fill up with gas. You do it more rarely, actually.
Yeah, I think that's right. It hasn't been helped by the fact that multiple early movers in the space have sought to, deliver a subscription or a membership-based model, and the access validation for that model is different in each case. So that's brought up this wide variability. I think, our philosophy would be that it's perfectly fine for providers to enter into long-term preferential contracts with consumers for services if they want to, but better if those are supplemented by a sort of a basic standard payment experience, which can be priced differently if necessary. I mean, perhaps an analogy might be rack rates in hotels, although let's hope that the pricing managers they hire don't come from the hotel industry. But you could imagine a standard price accessible to anyone with a simple tap of a contactless payment device, in the same way that you would pay for your groceries in a supermarket. But that doesn't preclude advantageous offers for members of a scheme who already have the necessary QR code to scan, or to the smart card to tap.
Yeah, there've been, we see many membership schemes that really could apply here, right? That's the Costco version of EV charging, in which if you're not a member, you do that rack rate, and you couldn't interoperate. I think a lot of that ends up landing in the court of being able to interoperate. And I think what's interesting is we have that opportunity for interoperability. We have actually a lot of APIs and the ability to build those things. Those are not unusual capabilities in this day and age. So how do you see, what technologies do you see as being important to kind of enable this EV charging payments growth and interoperability growth?
Well, I mean, we can look at it on a number of time horizons, I guess. Today, especially in the European markets, very mature market for standardized sort of tap to start, tap to stop charging transactions. That we could do today. If we go further forward and maybe sort of try to think of a future where we're asking the car to do more of the work, I think the ISO standards around the cable do actually provide an interesting opportunity around the payment part that the industry might not have looked at in a lot of depth. It's not just a cable for charge, as I'm sure everybody on this call knows. It's also a secure data connection that allows the vehicle and the charge point to exchange information. That actually sets the scene very nicely for some sort of automated brokering of price, current, and time. And potentially that can be a channel through which payment credentials can be passed from the car to the terminal, and the terminal can transact in the background. So I would, I think there's a lot of interesting things to be done around that that particular process, and that piece of EV industry infrastructure or standardization. I won't go as far as sort of starting to speculate what happens when we get to wireless charging baked into parking bays, but maybe that's a little bit too far into the future for the moment.
We do have a discussion later on today with a number of folks from the EV from the EV ecosystem industry. So I think that we can bring up some of those topics then too. Niclas, what is Volvo doing in terms of some of that communication or data or working with the EV ecosystem?
I think, well, in general, we're trying to take the approach of enabling collaboration as easily as possible with third parties. That's what we basically I think the way we think about it is either you try to build your own proprietary solutions and you just hope that that will be the one that really in the end wins or becomes the best one, or at least in the meantime is something that is good enough for our customers, or you build something open so that you can collaborate with anyone. That we've chosen the latter strategy mainly, where and I mentioned in my introduction that the collaboration with ChargePoint, that's just one company that we've collaborated with, and I think we're collaborating in the same way with other charging providers in other markets, and I think that's the strategy and the way we are able to do something that actually scales in across different types of charging stations, across different markets, like I said, and it at least provides part of I shouldn't say solution. I think it really helps with some of the pain points around payment and so on. Will, in your talk earlier, you actually talked about the map store, which I think was a very good way to describe it, because you're completely right. I don't think people will use their different navigation systems. Hopefully they're able to even select which one they prefer to use. And it's very unlikely that they would like to use 10 different charging apps to guide them when they're going from San Francisco to Los Angeles, and then start with selecting the charging provider and then be routed through the charging provider. It's the other way around. You select your preferred navigation software, and then in that system, you're expected to be guided to the charging stations.
It's the opposite of e-commerce, in the sense that for an e-commerce shipment, location is irrelevant. For a recharge your EV, location is absolutely the most important thing. So.
Yeah, but then when it comes to when you're actually connected, like you have the cable connection currently, like you said, and there's the ISO standards supporting the standardization of that communication. At the same time, I think the vast majority of cars are actually connected through the internet as well. And you mentioned the wireless charging, where of course there might be some wireless direct interface to the car to handle the charging itself. But for payment, I would long term actually like to believe that we can use something based on the fact that cars actually are connected to the internet. That's where I also see a large opportunity for standardization.
Yeah, I agree with you, Niclas. And actually, if you think back to the RidePay platform that I presented, that essentially is this model where at the forecourt itself, all that's happening is two different devices have internet connections to a remote platform that's orchestrating. And the same, of course, will be true for EV. I'm actually working on an interesting project right now with Vodafone. We're looking at whether smart contracts between trusted vehicles and charge point units can be triggered, and different forms to actually trigger the transfer of value remotely if a trusted interaction can be proven between the charge point and the vehicle. There will be a number of ways in which the value can be transferred from party to counterparty. Could be card-based, could be account-to-account transfer, could be open banking. But fundamentally, if it's happening in the cloud, it's not really your problem. We in the payments industry can solve that, and we'll deliver the best, safest way of transferring money at the best price. Hopefully for the participants on this call, it's going to be about making sure the experience is trustworthy, repeatable, reliable, and enjoyable. And an internet-based approach seems to me perfectly valid.
We're coming up on time here, but maybe what I can do is pose the last question is, really what should OEMs and what should payment companies think about now to collaborate? What do you see as being kind of the quickest way to engaging and working on something meaningful today?
Please
go ahead, Will. Go ahead.
All right. Well, I think there's been a lot of pilots, a lot of proof of concepts. I don't think there's anything technologically difficult here. I think the market is at a point where we are looking for open models of collaboration to start scaling quite dramatically, and for other people to come and join in. That's very much what we hope will happen with RidePay for fueling. I believe the same thing can be made to happen for EV with forward-thinking manufacturers, MSPs, and charge point operators. The only other thing I would say is that we need to remember that for the merchants, doing business involves not just accepting payments, but also promoting. And maybe the part of this that we haven't thought of enough is, do we need some specifications by which merchants like EMSPs can push information about price and service into the vehicle for drivers to take account of? It's all very well your vehicle, triggering a geofence when it's sitting in the bay at a charge point, but the merchant's missing out on the opportunity to, invite you to pull over when you're 1 mile down the road and heading in that direction. So perhaps that's a missing piece of the puzzle we could all think about together more.
And I think as an OEM, I think the key aspect is really about openness and collaboration. As OEMs, we have a quite long history of having walled gardens, and we build up these closed ecosystems, and we try to build everything ourselves. I don't see that really scaling very well here at all. I think the only way to succeed and be a positive influence here is to invite other third parties to an open arena. This is very similar actually to the smartphone industry 10 or 13, 14 years ago. And unless you have a 50-60% market share, you will not be able to set the standard yourself. Then it's going to be about collaboration. So I think that's what we need to do as OEMs. Make sure that we are quick and easy to work with for third parties.
Great. All right, gentlemen, we are at time. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on this topic and joining us this morning. We appreciate you joining us, and we will hopefully get more of our membership to collaborate with both Mastercard and Volvo as well.
We welcome that. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Niclas.